Hello everyone, back again with movie and tune recap. Today, I'm going to explain a British Gothic horror film from 2020, titled The Banishing. Spoilers ahead, so watch out and take care. In 1935 in England, a priest named Stanley, who lives in Morley Hall, is reading a passage from the Bible, when he hears a loud bang from the next room. Curious, Stanley goes to investigate and sees a terrifying vision of himself killing his wife. Soon after, Bishop Malachi visits the Morley Hall, where it is revealed that Stanley has indeed murdered his wife in a jealous rage before taking his own life, and the bishop asks the town doctor, Dr. Sutter, to clean up the scene and cover up the crime. 3 years later, a new priest, Linus Forster, moves into the Morley Hall with his wife, Mary Ann, and her young daughter, Adelaide, who was born out of wedlock but is being passed off as Mary Ann's niece. While exploring the house alone, Adelaide finds some eerie dolls in a cupboard and decides to keep them. That night, after tucking Adelaide into bed, Mary Ann noticed the dolls in her room, and Adelaide tells her mother that the dolls are her friends, but Mary Ann brushes it off and doesn't think much of it. Linus and Mary Ann's marriage is strained because Linus believes that intimacy for pleasure is sinful and also fears that Mary Ann might cheat on him. One evening, while brushing her hair in her room, Mary Ann is startled by a loud noise, but she can't figure out where it came from, and it becomes clear that someone, or something, is watching her. Mary Ann is haunted by painful memories of her time in a mental asylum during her pregnancy. The next morning, during breakfast, Mary Ann tells Linus about the strange noise she heard the night before. Linus dismisses it, suggesting it was probably just rats, and tells her to take Adelaide for a walk around town. Mary Ann agrees, and the two of them head to the cinema, where they watch a documentary about war, which frightens Adelaide, making her uncomfortable. Meanwhile, at the church where he serves as a priest, Linus is visited by Harry Reid, an occultist who has researched the dark history of Morley Hall, and he warns Linus that the house has a sinister past. It was originally the site of a monastery belonging to the Monasian order, a group that practiced dark rituals and used torture as punishment for those they deemed sinners. The house itself was built on the ruins of the monastery, which had burned down many years ago. Harry also reveals that Bishop Malachi didn't assign Linus to Morley Hall because of his skills as a priest, but because the bishop is hiding dark secrets and trying to cover up something terrible. He tells Linus about the previous priest, Stanley, who died and was buried within the house, as well as a mysterious tomb not far from the property. However, thinking Harry is delusional, Linus throws him out of the church.
My family is none of your concern.
Back at home, Mary Ann and Adelaide decide to play a game called Mr. Wolf, but during the game, when Mary Ann turns around, she realizes that Adelaide has vanished without a trace. Mary Ann frantically searches for Adelaide until she discovers a hidden door that leads to a basement beneath the house. Down there, she finds a strange mirror and notices something unsettling. Her reflection is delayed, as if the mirror isn't quite in sync with reality. Suddenly, Adelaide startles Mary Ann from behind, and as they leave the basement, a woman in white briefly appears in the mirror. Meanwhile at the church, Linus examines the Bible that once belonged to Stanley, and he finds that its pages have been defaced, covered in strange markings and scribbles. When he returns home, he finds Bishop Malachi waiting for him, and the bishop warns Linus not to trust Harry Reid, the occultist, and tells him to report any future visits from Harry. Later that night, as Mary Ann heads upstairs, she sees Adelaide standing in front of a mirror, staring intently at her reflection. When Mary Ann calls out to her, the viewers notice something horrifying. Adelaide's reflection in the mirror doesn't move and remains there even after Adelaide has left. Mary Ann gets Adelaide ready for bed, and the girl shows her a collection of dolls and points out a room that she says Mary Ann isn't allowed to enter because her mom forbids it. Confused, Mary Ann reminds Adelaide that she is her mother, but Adelaide insists she isn't, suddenly becoming agitated and behaving erratically. Furious, Mary Ann puts her to bed and Adelaide expresses her dislike towards her mom. That night, Mary Ann is awakened by a strange noise, and when she looks out the window, she sees a figure standing in the distance, watching their deaf housekeeper, Betsy. Mary Ann rushes outside to help, only to find a horrifying scene. she sees a version of herself weeping over Betsy's lifeless body. She screams, which draws Linus outside, but when he arrives, Betsy's body is nowhere to be found. It turns out Marianne was experiencing unsettling hallucinations, shadowy figures and premonitions, showing the future death of Betsy. The next day, Marianne takes Adelaide to see Dr. Sutter, the town physician who had once covered up the crime committed by Stanley. Concerned about Adelaide's strange behavior, Marianne confides in Dr. Sutter that her family is living in Morley Hall, and upon hearing this, the doctor looks troubled but didn't reveal what he knows. At a local bar, Harry is confronted by Bishop Malachi, who strongly objects to Harry's interference and openly threatens him, warning him to leave town. However, Harry fires back, publicly denouncing Malachi's Nazi sympathies and exposing the bishop's secret. He reveals that Bishop Malachi is using the Forster family to fulfill a dark, hidden purpose for his Nazi associates. Later, as Harry is going home, two thugs, sent by Bishop Malachi, ambush him and beat him severely before leaving him on the road. Back at Morley Hall, Betsy, who is sensing that something is deeply troubling Marianne, tells her to seek help from Harry, as he knows more about the house and could provide answers. Marianne follows Betsy's advice and visits Harry at the address Betsy gave her. When she arrives, she finds Harry badly wounded from the beating but still didn't leave the town. Harry warns her that the Morley Hall has a dark influence, as the house turn its residents against each other, and urge her to leave for her own safety and that of her family. Before she leaves, Harry gives her an old book about the Manassian order, explaining that it holds the secrets of the house's twisted history, and advise her to discuss it with Linus. Determined to get to the bottom of things, Linus decides to investigate the tomb that Harry had told him about earlier. He visits the site, but after searching thoroughly, he finds nothing unusual and dismisses Harry's warnings once again, and he returns home. Suddenly, Linus begins to hear strange noises and decides to investigate. He discovers that the sound is coming from the basement. Linus enters the secret door leading to the basement, and experiences a disturbing vision of Marianne committing adultery. This prompts a jealous argument between him and Marianne once she returns, particularly after he discovers that she visited Harry, and his distrust of her deepens. The next day, after a church service, Marianne is visited by Bishop Malachi, and suspecting that she's been secretly meeting with Harry, the bishop makes veiled threats. He reveals that he knows Adelaide is not Linus' biological child, as well as Marianne's time in the mental hospital, during which her daughter was taken away for a while. He also revealed that it was he who orchestrated Adelaide's return to her, and arranged Marianne's marriage to Linus, as well as Linus posting at Morley Hall. Malachi makes it clear that if she tries to leave the house or disrupt his plans, he has the power to take everything away from her, including Adelaide, before leaving. Marianne goes upstairs to call Adelaide, but she is nowhere to be found, and Marianne assumes Adelaide might have gone to the basement. As Marianne descends into the basement, she is frightened by eerie noises and is confronted by a terrifying vision of a woman, perhaps the same woman that was seen in the mirror earlier. Marianne managed to find Adelaide, but their relationship deteriorates as Adelaide begins to resent her and starts speaking to an unseen figure she claims is her real mother. Distressed, Marianne goes to the bathroom to calm herself, but she has another unsettling vision, this time of herself pregnant. As she leaves the bathroom and heads toward her room, she finds Adelaide standing in front of a mirror. When Marianne calls out to her, Adelaide turns and eerily points behind her. Marianne turns to see multiple versions of herself clinging to the walls, and soon she finds herself pulled toward the wall as well. Suddenly, the mysterious woman Marianne had seen in the basement appears again and steps into the mirror, and to her horror, Adelaide follows the woman into the mirror before Marianne is released from the wall's grip. Panicked, she rushed to Linus for help, but finds him drunk and unresponsive, and desperate, she turns to Harry, who agrees to assist her. Meanwhile, Linus, who is now fully intoxicated, begins muttering complaints about his wife and the housemaid, acting irrationally, completely unaware of the dark figure looming behind him. When Harry and Marianne return to the house, they discover that Betsy has been brutally murdered by Linus, who is now possessed and in a trance. Harry is able to snap Linus out of the trance and explains that Adelaide has been taken by the spirit of a pregnant woman who was murdered by the Manassian monks, as she had been carrying the child of one of them. The vengeful spirit is now holding Adelaide in the darkness as revenge for the trauma she endured. Harry instructs Marianne to retrieve something that belongs to Adelaide, believing it could be used to call her back. Marianne retrieves one of Adelaide's dolls, and together, they form a plan to use the doll in a ritual to reach her. The trio head down to the basement, where Harry has Linus perform a ritual from a book he found among the former vicar's possession, to help Marianne rescue Adelaide and confront the spirits haunting the house. Marianne is subjected to a series of nightmarish visions, many of which are connected to her troubled past. She sees herself back in the mental asylum where she was institutionalized during her pregnancy, feeling the same despair and isolation. In this disturbing vision, Marianne is taken captive by the sinister Manassian monks, who force her to confess her supposed sins. She admits she cherished the night she spent with Adelaide's father, and in response, the leader of the monks grabs a butcher knife and prepares to kill her. But instead of cowering, Marianne defiantly declares that she is unashamed of her past and hurls insults at the monks, rejecting their judgment. When Marianne finally emerges from the vision, she finds herself back in the dark basement. Using her torchlight, she navigates through the darkness and manages to locate Adelaide along with the spirit of the murdered woman. Just then, Linus and Harry find her, and Marianne pleads with the spirit, asking her to release Adelaide, and promise that they will honor the woman and her unborn child by giving them a proper burial. The group keeps their word, laying the remains of the murdered woman and her unborn child to rest in the cemetery. In a heartfelt gesture, Adelaide offers her doll to be buried alongside the woman, and Linus leads a prayer for the spirit's peace. That night, Bishop Malachi and his thugs are seen digging up the bodies that had been buried, and Malachi then deliver the remains to Nazi officials in Stuttgart. The final shot of the movie shows Marianne and Adelaide attending a church service, but ominously, the doll that had been buried with the woman is now back in Adelaide's hands. Okay guys, that's all the recap about The Banishing from 2020. Thanks for watching, see you again in the next video.